Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Midlife Crisis. In this episode, we are continuing DC 1 million and concluding DC 1 million. This is the final part of the DC 1 million event where we are going to be covering the final tie-ins, the final issue of DC 1 million, and then ending with a special DC 1 million epilogue issue. But before we get into our first issue that we're going to be talking about today, which is The Flash 1 million, if you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe and like the video and hit the notification bell. And recently I created a new channel, and you'll see a link to it in the description of the video. And that new channel is called Marvel and DC Retrospective XL. On that channel, I will be uploading supercut episodes of some of my videos. So, some of the big events like Millennium or this one, DC 1 million, which are going to be like 4-part videos on my main channel, I will be editing them into one single, 11, 10-hour long video and then uploading it onto that new channel. Same with some of my Flash videos. I'm thinking of like stringing together a bunch of them and just putting them on that channel as one long video. That way it's an alternative so that people can watch these really long versions of the videos instead of having to switch videos. Or if they want to, they can just watch the regular sized videos on this channel. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to kill my current channel with super long videos, but I do want people to have the availability to watch, the entire event in one video instead of having to switch videos, Obviously, I can't do that regularly because I don't want to be recording for 11 hours a week. But yeah, that's going to be a new thing. The new channel's up and ready. And the first video, which is Millennium, is up there. All 11 hours of it. So without further ado, let's get straight into our first tie-in that we're going to be talking about today, which is The Flash 1 million. Written by Mark Waid and Michael Jan Friedman, with art by Josh Hood and Jose Marzan Jr., the inker that we are all well accustomed to by this point. So, The Flash 1 million continues on from Power of Shazam 1 million, which was in a previous episode. I think it might have been episode 1, like part 1 of DC 1 million. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I recommend going back. All of the tie-ins are listed in the chapters, so you can just find the Captain Marvel one, like the Power of Shazam one, listen to that real quick, and then come back to this one and continue listening, so that you catch yourself up on the story. So yeah, this one takes place directly after that one, but it's not connected to it until towards the end. It takes place at the same time. So Wally West, the Flash, is in the future in the year 853rd century. He swapped places with John Fox, and he's currently on Mercury, which is the planet that John Fox resides over. Wally West is currently doing his challenge because all of Earth's present-day heroes that are members of the JLA have all been sent into the future to take part in challenges as a way to celebrate the return of Superman in the future. Because in the future, Superman has been laying dormant for many years, and he's going to reawaken. It's going to be his grand return. So Wally is doing his challenge, which is racing against himself. How does he race against himself? Well, he runs so fast that he sends a, image of himself to the past, and so he is racing against, an image of himself. And so, how does he beat himself? He just runs really fast, and he runs faster than the duplicate image that he created, and he catches up to it, and he overtakes it, and he beats it, and he wins the race. That's as much sense as I can make out of it. Because it's a comic book, and it's The Flash, and the last thing you want to try and do is make sense out of The Flash, or any comic book superhero. So he beats his image, and meanwhile, Commander Cold, who is the future version of Captain Cold, and Heatwave, they never really say his name in this. I think, his name is just Heatwave. I don't know why his name isn't different. Commander Cold and Heatwave still exist in the future as their own, new versions. They don't have any identities outside of their supervillain names, doesn't matter. They're just causing havoc. Captain Cold in the future has the ability to extract memories from people's heads with his cold powers. Like, he can freeze them and then steal their memory. And as we know from the Power of Shazam tie-in, memories and information are worth a lot of money on the black market. So people are always trying to get information and sell it. As we know, in that tie-in, a lot of people came and they took over Shazam's Rock of Eternity, because it was a place that was amazing and magical, and you could sell the artifacts within it for a lot of money. So that's what Commander Cold and Heatwave are trying to do. They're trying to get information from people to sell it. And while they're doing this, they get contacted by a mysterious being who we know is Solaris. The comic doesn't say it's Solaris. We know it's Solaris. I don't know why Mark Waid tries to keep it a secret. Maybe he thought that this tie-in was going to come out before the Solaris reveal. I don't know, even though the Solaris reveal was at the very beginning of DC 1 Million. Point is, Solaris comes and he talks to them and he says, if you work for me, I've got a special plan that's not only going to help you defeat the present-day Flash, but also make you a lot of money and just cause havoc, because that's what you want to do. So basically, their plan is to build a big machine that is going to draw the energy out of the Flash and use the energy to stop the planet, or make the planet start rotating. Because right now, the planet of Mercury doesn't rotate. One half of it is cold, the other half is hot, and that's how the planet operates. If you start rotating it, it'll change the temperatures of each side of the planet, and then everything will crumble and fall apart. And that's the goal of Commander Cold and Heatwave, because they just want to destroy everything because they're maniacs. So they put their plan into action. They create this machine with the help of Solaris. And after Wally West wins his race against himself, he suddenly gets frozen by Captain Cold's technology, which starts sapping at his energy to power the machine. Wally West is helpless to Commander Cold and Heatwave. They're all like, ha 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 ha, we've beaten you. But what they don't know is that while Wally West was running around Mercury, he built up enough momentum and air molecules that they've like mixed with his the air molecules that he created while he was running have mixed with his like the force that he was creating while he was running around in circles throughout Mercury. So they have finally caught up to him as like a big tirade of like intense winds that were following Wally. So they've caught up with him, and they just smashed straight through Commander Cold and Heatwave, and Wally uses the momentum from these air molecules that he created earlier to push himself and give himself the energy that he needs to get away from Cold and Heatwave. But they very quickly chase after him, and because Wally is low on energy, he can't fight them. He's not fast enough, he's not strong enough, he's too weak, so he's struggling against them, and all he can do is run away. Wally running away is what makes people in the future believe that he's a traitor, because they see him as a coward, because he's running away from Captain Cold and Heatwave. They don't know that Wally is low on energy and that he's getting his energy stolen. They just think that Wally is a coward, and therefore they think that he's a traitor, like how they thought Superman was a traitor, and Wonder Woman, and Batman, etc., etc. So Wally is enemy number one. Wally needs to find the machine and stop it, and he knows that there is a way to get to the machine through a Tesseract that is inside a giant, like, you know that there's like this big dome that holds all sorts of information that was in the Power of Shazam tie-in. Wally goes there and he enters inside it, much like the other people did to get into the Rock of Eternity. So he enters through it, and he makes his way into the Rock of Eternity. which he says in this that it's very painful traveling through this Tesseract to get through the Rock of Eternity. It was never stated that it was painful by anyone before this, but I guess Mark Waid wanted to add a little bit nuance and be like, it's really painful going through a Tesseract. It like rips you apart, puts you back together. So he ends up in the Rock of Eternity, where he sees all of the like superpowered people causing chaos inside the Rock of Eternity. And then Captain Cold and Heatwave show up and try to stop Wally from stopping their machine. And they eventually just end up fighting each other. Like, Commander Cold and Heatwave just end up turning against one another. I know I keep calling him Captain Cold, but his name is Commander Cold. Whatever, I'm just gonna accidentally say his name wrong. So Commander Cold and Heatwave start fighting each other because they just get too caught up in the chaos that's going on in the Rock of Eternity. And that's when Shazam, he was originally Captain Marvel, but now he is the Wizard Shazam. He shows up, and alongside the new Captain Marvel that he gave his powers to in the Power of Shazam 1 million issue. So they show up, and Wally is like, hey, it's great to see you. Wow, you're the Billy Batson I know, except in the future. That's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to need your help in order to stop this machine. And so, working alongside the new Captain Marvel, Wally finds the machine, and he manages to reconfigure it to stop the planet from spinning. And he succeeds. They reconfigure the machine, the planet stops spinning, and then Wally says that he needs to go and find the JLA on Jupiter, because that's where their headquarters are. So he's going to go there to meet up with the JLA so they can figure out what they're going to do next. And Shazam, alongside the new Captain Marvel, is like Billy is like, I'm going to come with you. I'll call him Billy, that way it makes it less confusing. Billy is like, I'm going to come with you with the new Captain Marvel. I can't remember his name. And so they decide to go with Wally to meet with the JLA on Jupiter. And that's the end of the tie-in. That's everything. Pretty good, I would say. A little bit confusing, like kind of hard to wrap your head around what's going on. There's a lot of sciencey stuff in this, but that's just Mark Waid. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a lot of fun. I always enjoy seeing. It's always interesting seeing Wally team up with other heroes, and the fact that he teams up with an older, even though it isn't until the very end, he teams up with an older Captain Marvel, and it's interesting seeing them react to one another, and how Wally knows who he is, but he's never been to the Rock of Eternity before, so when he gets there, he's like, whoa, this is crazy, like, what a weird place. It's pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. I'm looking forward to seeing the other JLA's reaction, assuming that Billy Batson does show up on Jupiter, like his older self does show up, that he meets the rest of the JLA. Seeing their reaction to him is going to be interesting. But yeah, that's enough about that tie-in. The next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Supergirl, issue 1 million, written by Peter David, with art by Dusty Abell and Norman Lee. As you may not know, Peter David was writing Supergirl at the time. Probably created the most influential Supergirl run of all time. I think this is definitely the run that a lot of people think back to when they think of like a Supergirl comic run or like a Supergirl comic series. It was before she was brought back to life, so this is still the version from who is like it's Linda Danvers. It's like the Matrix protoplasm Supergirl from another dimension. She's like a protoplasmic alien from another dimension who comes to the main universe and takes the form of Supergirl, and then she meets a girl named Linda Danvers, and Linda Danvers dies, and so Matrix Supergirl fuses with her and they become one being, and then she discovers that she's actually a part of this race of angel-like beings, and she gets like fire wings and stuff. So that's what Supergirl currently is at this point in time in DC Comics in the 90s. Just thought I'd explain that because I don't know yet if that version of Supergirl appears in this. I'm pretty sure this tie-in just follows the future version of her in the 853rd century. So let's find out and check out Supergirl 1 Million. So Supergirl 1 Million is really weird, and when it comes to the characters in this, it's very clear that Peter David is just having fun, and that's great because I enjoyed reading this. It just doesn't have a lot of substance to it, but it doesn't need a lot of substance because it's just a fun... It's like the Azrael book, where it's just mindless fun. It's not as good as the Azrael one, but I enjoyed this. So we have a... There's only 2 named characters in this book. Dura and Rel, who is the Supergirl of the future. Her name isn't actually revealed until the end of the book, but it's not like it's some kind of big twist or something. It's might as well just say what her name is. It's Rel. And then the other characters featured in this are 2 separate alien races. So you have the Blufkers. The Blufkers. That's what I'm gonna pronounce it as. The Blufkers. And the Zayanteri. Now, the Zayanteri are enemies of the Blufkers, and they're in a war with them, and they are going to come and destroy the Blufkers system and take over it. Not destroy it, but just take over it. The Blufkers are like little snail-looking dudes. The Zayanteri are like... They call them slime because they are slimy people, but they're also literally made out of slime. Dura is not a member of either species. He is a chancellor who has been traveling to different systems and, you know, working for them and helping them. He's like this yellow alien. He kind of looks like a Duran. He's currently in his like sleeping tank that he heals in, and when he wakes up, the Blufker that helped raise him wake him up. Sorry, Dura isn't the High Chancellor. He's just he's just somebody that helps like people. He's talking to the High Chancellor of the Blufkers. So the High Chancellor Blufker awakens Dura and notes that Dura has actually he must have been pretty erratic while he slept, because he actually scratched a weird symbol in his chest, and when we see it, it's like a bloody S. And that's when Blufker is talking about the Zayanteri coming, their ships are coming towards them. He then notices that there is a lone ship by itself, and Dura knows what this is. Dura says that it is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy and that they need to get out or they are going to die. And that the Zayateri are all dead, and then they'll be coming for them next, because this thing is going towards the Zayateri. It turns out this thing is Rel, the future Supergirl. She's just she's 6.5 years old. She's this tiny little girl with poofy brown hair and a little yellow cape and a little S on her chest, a little skirt, and she rides around on a skateboard, and she just rides around in space, and she's the depiction of those really young kid characters who are really annoying and cause all sorts of chaos and stuff. Have you ever seen that? If you've never seen the show Superhero Squad show, there is an episode in that show of a little baby who, a little girl who gets powers, and she starts causing all sorts of chaos. It's basically that, but in space with a girl that's Supergirl. It's basically the same thing. So she sees a comet, and she's like, "Come here, comet," and she blows up the comet just by touching it. And then she invades the Zayateri spaceships. She just gets into it. She actually loses her skateboard, and she ends up on the ship, and then she starts really annoying the Zayateri and just messing around with things. They try to stop her, and she starts messing with the systems, She's like, where are we going? And he's like, to the Blufker system, to wipe out our hated enemy once and for all, and you're getting in the way of that. And she's like, the Blufker system, okay, are we there yet? And he's like, no. And she's like, rips a bunch of wires out of the machine. He's like, whoops, sorry, are we there yet? And he's like, no. And they try to stop her from destroying more stuff, but she just wanders away, and she's just like, hey, you can't catch me, can't catch me. It's like, miss me, now you gotta kiss me. And so she just keeps causing chaos and stuff throughout the ship, destroying all sorts of things, and she comes across the power core, and they tell her not to touch it, and she says, oh, then I should touch it, and she touches it, and she blows up the power core, destroying their entire ship. And right before they die, the Zaatari's leader is like, I hate children. And the ships all blow up, except for one of them. All the ships blow up except for one. They're all destroyed, except for a single ship. And she realizes that this ship is still active, and so she hitches a ride on it, and she decides that she's going to be careful this time and not destroy it by accident. Meanwhile, Dura is packing his things and is getting ready to go, and the Blufkers are like, we're not going to write your names in the history because you're a massive coward and you're running away. And Dura's like, yeah, of course I'm running away, because that girl is going to be responsible for the destruction of your planet. I'm getting the hell out of here. See ya. And so he leaves on his ship and flies away as the ship with Rel on it starts heading towards the Blufker's planet. The ship has like a rod on it that allows it to phase in and out of reality. Rel accidentally rips it off, causing it to phase out of reality as it heads into the atmosphere of the planet. And she puts it back on, and so it phases back into reality, and the Blufkers see the ship entering the atmosphere of their planet, and they start shooting at it. And then so she gets, like, Rel gets hit by like a beam and is just like, ah, and she like rips the rod off again. And so the ship phases out of reality again and enters the planet's core. And then she puts it back on, and the ship materializes inside the planet's core, and the planet explodes. Because the ship is in the core, and all the energy from their ship causes the planet's core to explode, killing everyone on the ship except for Rel, destroying the entire planet, killing an entire race. And Dura gets hit by debris from the planet, and he's gonna die. He didn't get away in time. He's like, fine, let it end. And then, like, the ship gets caught by Rel. And that's when we get our big reveal. That Rel and Dura know each other very well. In fact, Rel believes that Dura is her father. She calls him Daddy, and Dura is just like, don't call me Daddy. Just let me go. And Rel's just like, okay, I'll let you go. You can go your separate ways. I won't bother you anymore, Daddy. And she's like, I love you forever. And then he's like, Rel, if I let you come with me, will you do as I say? And she's like, yes. He's like, and behave yourself? Yes. And keep your hands to yourself? Yes. And not blow up any more races? I didn't mean to. I promise, or it's no deal. I promise. And stop saying I'm your daddy. Okay, Daddy. I call shotgun. And she's like, where are we going, Daddy? And he's like, the Gunda system. Now we're on trying not to blow it up, okay? And she's like, okay. Are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. And that's where it ends. And on that nice little conversation, like I said, this tie-in isn't deep, but it doesn't need to be. It's just Peter David having fun and just doing a fun little comic. It has nothing to do with the present-day Supergirl. It's just like, what would a future Supergirl be like? She would be a 6.5-year-old who just causes chaos because she doesn't really know how to control her powers. One thing I am going to say is anyone writing Supergirl in the future, or unless they already have, please bring Rel back and just make her a character in like Superman comics and Supergirl comics, because she has a lot of potential. For all I know, maybe she has been brought back. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, see if Rel has been brought back by anybody. I'm sure she has. I feel like if Peter David hasn't used her further down the line, I'm sure another writer brought her back, because she's a very fun character with a lot of potential. But yeah, that's the end of that tie-in. And the next tie-in is one that I completely forgot about until now. Chronos 1 million. Because Chronos has his own comic series, because everyone had a series in the 90s. The Creeper had one, Chronos has one. If you don't know who Chronos is, he's a longtime enemy of the character known as the Atom, aka Ray Palmer. He got his powers from the same meteor that Ray Palmer did, I'm pretty sure. He was like responsible for the White Dwarf crashing on Earth, which gave Ray Palmer his powers. There's something that connects the two of them with the White Dwarf. I'm sure it gets retconned and changed a lot. He has his own series now. He has the ability to control time and travel through time. You would think for a story like this that's all about the future that this would probably be somewhat of an important tie-in. So I guess we're gonna find out. It's written by John Francis Moore with art by J.H. Williams and Mick Gray. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so before I get into explaining what happens in Chronos 1 million, it's probably good to point out that this issue is actually in dedication to Archie Goodwin, who had died that year, I'm pretty sure. Great writer. He wrote the first issue of, like, he wrote a lot of stuff, but the thing that is most notable that he wrote related to the show that I'm doing is he wrote the first issue of Armageddon, and that issue was really good. Archie Goodwin was a very good writer. I think he was also, like, he's written, like, a bit of Spider-Man, and he also was the editor of Spider-Man for a while, too. Apparently he was a really good editor. I think it was at Marvel. They said that Archie Goodwin was one of the best editors at Marvel, even though he wasn't editor for very long. Rest in peace, Archie Goodwin. So Chronos 1 million is interesting. There's a lot I've got to say about it but I'll save that for the end. Because it's not directly related. Like, it is related to the story, like what I have to say, but it's not important enough that I have to get it all out right now. It's definitely best to save it for the end. So Chronos 1 million actually takes place before the event. And you would think, like, oh, that means we should read it before DC 1 million, issue 1, right? Like, this should be the first one we read because it takes place first chronologically. But that's not exactly the case. It's actually listed on a lot of reading orders as the first one you should read. And I definitely do not agree with that at all. Like, reading it, I'm like, this should not be the first issue that you read when reading DC 1 million. Not at all. Reading orders should never be just chronological. It should be how you're supposed to read the event. Even if there's an issue that takes place before everything else, if it makes more sense once you've read everything else, then it shouldn't be read first. It should be read after that, you know? So Chronos is in Metropolis in the far future. It's funny, this issue is a Chronos issue, but, like, John Fox is the main character of this. John Fox Flash. Chronos is watching John Fox. He's talking about him. The Superman... So future Superman is currently in the 5th dimension dealing with the king, the current king of the universe, who is a 5th dimensional being. So John Fox is looking after Metropolis during his absence, and there's this computer system called Lois Lane, that's communicating to John, and she tells him that somebody is messing with the Tesseracts for Metropolis, and that they're closing off, like that they're turning off. And so John quickly gets through one of the Tesseracts before it shuts down completely, so that he can get to the main system that the Tesseracts are powered in, to figure out what's going on and who's messing with the system. And when he gets there, he finds Chronos. And Chronos uses his powers against John to stop him. And he reveals that he's actually taken John's... Because John's got these, like, time gauntlets on. And Chronos takes them and is like, I can make more use out of these than you can. You don't even know how to use them properly. And so he takes John Fox's time gauntlets and he gets out. So John Fox goes into the computer system and he figures out that it was Chronos who was the one that was tampering with the Tesseracts. And so he goes to try and find Chronos. Chronos has traveled to Hong Kong in the year 11,021 AD. And in that future, there is this thing known as the Chronovore, which is a giant bug that just eats time. It doesn't really serve any real purpose to the story. It's just our setting that we're currently in. It just exists. It's kind of freaky looking. But Chronos is in the Chromazone, which is a bar that people drink at that travel through time. Like, people that travel through time drink at this bar. And it's owned by Ambush Bug. Because it makes sense that Ambush Bug would be the proprietor of a bar that is for time travelers, because he himself is a time traveler. I mean, he's a fourth dimensional breaking character. Like, he can go wherever he wants, he can do whatever he wants. He's a weird character. He's basically DC's answer to Deadpool, except he's a lot less crude. He's a lot more kid friendly. If you've seen Batman Brave and the Bold, Ambush Bug plays a large role in the final episode of that show. I highly recommend checking it out. It's a great way to introduce yourself to Ambush Bug before reading any comics that he's in. So yeah, Chronos goes to this bar and he's just hanging out there, and then John Fox comes in and he's like, I finally found you, I'm taking you in, or at least I was going to take you in, but then the authorities told me that it's actually better off if I just kill you because they don't care about you, Chronos. And Chronos is like, you can't kill me because you got like a code of honor, you're a superhero, people look up to you, they can't look up to a superhero that kills someone. And Ambush Bug is like, can you take this outside because I don't need this kind of trouble in my bar. And you've got like a big rocket launcher that says meet your maker on it. So Chronos reveals that, like, all John Fox wants is he wants the time gauntlets. And so Chronos reveals that he's currently in control of the Tesseract system, so he can make Tesseracts appear whenever he wants. So he opens up a Tesseract and he goes to pull out gloves. He pulls out a cat. It's like his pet cat. And he's like, hey, I usually have an allergy to cats, but it's a good thing they got rid of allergies in the year 20,000. And John Fox is just like, stop playing around and get those gloves. And so Chronos pulls out this puzzle box because off panel he put the gloves in a puzzle box to open up. And he opens it up and he reveals the gloves. And John Fox goes to grab them. And then a big beam blasts past them. And it's revealed to be this demon-looking alien called Scourge, who is a warrior from Warworld, and he wants the time gauntlets. Because what he wants to do, it's not revealed until later, but I might as well say what it is now. Scourge wants the time gauntlets so that he can go back in time and take over Krypton and kill all the Kryptonians before Krypton explodes, so that they can add Krypton's technology and stuff to Warworld and become even more powerful. That's what he wants to do. Obviously, they can't let Scourge get the gauntlets, or at least John Fox doesn't want him to, so he tries to attack Scourge, and Scourge reveals that in the future there's technology known as the Savitar Leech, which allows people to steal Speed Force from speedsters. So he has that technology and he uses it to suck out John Fox's Speed Force, so John can't run super fast. And then Scourge just like beats the crap out of Chronos and John, and so they retreat, and Chronos tells John that he's got a plan to deal with Scourge. And so Scourge shows up, and that's when Chronos just lets him have the gauntlets. And Scourge is like, yeah, I have the gauntlets and you can't do anything about it now, ha ha ha. And John Fox is just like, why did you give him the gauntlets? Now he can do whatever he wants. And Chronos is like, no he can't. And it's revealed that Chronos tampered with the gauntlets and now Scourge is stuck in a time loop for the rest of eternity. So he's in the same situation that the future Teen Titans ended up in the Resurrection Man tie-in, where they ended up time looping for eternity, except this time it's done more for humor and less for the effect of, oh no, they're dead because they're never going to get out of this time loop. So Chronos goes to have a drink, and he says it's better off that nobody has the gloves rather than anybody having the gloves. And so John is dropped off where he meets Owlman, the future Owlman. Future Owlman takes him back to his time period. And then he goes and he meets with Chronos at Chronos' house, which is this weird-ass looking palace, topsy-turvy. Looks like something from an M.C. Escher painting. And so it's revealed that Chronos still has the time gauntlets, and it makes you wonder, how does he have the time gauntlets when Scourge had time gauntlets? And it's because sometime off-panel, Chronos made like a duplicate pair of time gauntlets, and he gave those to Scourge, and so the fake ones made him get stuck into a time loop while he had the real ones hidden away at home the entire time. And so Owlman comes in and is like, I'm gonna have to take these time gauntlets from you. And Chronos is like, you know you can't take them from me and give them back to John, because you know for a fact that if John has these time gauntlets, then he's going to mess up the situation in the future. So like, when the Justice Legion gets sent back to the 20th century, if he has those time gauntlets, he will screw everything up and history will not go the way it's supposed to. Instead of getting stuck in the 20th century, they're all going to die. So, I'll give him the time gauntlets back after DC 1 million happens. After the DC 1 million event happens, I'll give him back his time gauntlets, but not until then. And Owlman is like, yeah, I'm going to come back for those time gauntlets. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing each other a lot more often in the future. And so it ends there. It ends on that little cliffhanger of the big reveal that, yes, this issue does take place before DC 1 million. And that it also doesn't matter. Not really, because unless the time gauntlets play a role later on in the story, I just don't see this really mattering overall. Like, you can probably just skip this tie-in. The fact it takes place before doesn't seem to have any bearing on the overall DC 1 million story. But I'm not going to say that for sure, because obviously I haven't finished DC 1 million, so for all I know, Chronos or the time gauntlets play a big role at the very end. I guess we're going to have to find out. But when I was saying earlier about I had some thoughts on this, my biggest disagreement with this issue is not necessarily the issue itself, but the reading order of this event. Before I started reading this, because I'm reading the omnibus, and the reading order in the omnibus is very different to the reading order on the reading order website that I use. And there are some issues in the omnibus where I wish they had a slightly different placement, but there's nothing egregious. I think the reading order is good enough. I had to do the Flash tie-in much later than the Shazam one, even though they take place not long after each other, but I feel like the story didn't lose its flow. It's kind of like we left that plot, we went and saw a different thing, and then we came back to it. But the fact that the reading order has you start with Chronos 1 million, which assumes that you're already reading DC 1 million by the stuff that happens at the very end, where they are referring to stuff that's already happened. Like, how could you read this before DC 1 million and not be confused? Because they're talking about, the Justice Legion getting caught in the 20th century, and you wouldn't know that if you didn't read DC 1 million issue 1. So, why would you read this one first? I don't know why it's first in the reading order list, but I will say, if you plan on reading DC 1 million, read the omnibus, don't follow the DC reading order. It's the first time I'm ever going to say that, because I think the reading order focused too much on chronological order and not an order that actually made sense to the reader. But yeah, that's enough about that tie-in. We're going to be moving on to the next tie-in, which is Lobo 1 million. That's right, Lobo has a tie-in to this one. He, in Genesis, he complained about not having any tie-ins to any of the events. And so after complaining, it seems like DC has been continuing to give him tie-ins. So, yeah, Lobo 1 million is written by... There's parodies for all of the names of the writers and stuff. So it's written by Fine Al Grant, Eventual Al Luzniak, like with art by Eventual Al Luzniak, and Immortal Probst. So yeah, Al Grant, Al Luzniak, and Al Probst. That was really hard to... 3 hours? That's a lot of hours. Al Vasquez, Al Prismacola, Al Oakley, Al Bedard. Oh, is that like Tony Bedard? So there are no like Al's? Is that part of the joke? Is that some of these guys' first names aren't even Al, and yet they just list them as Al anyway? I don't know. I'm confused. But yeah, Lobo 1 million. Let's get into it. Just as you would assume, Lobo issue 1 million is completely insane and is... like, it's just as insane as the Genesis tie-in. More insane, in fact, because with this issue, Alan Grant was able to just do whatever the hell he wanted because it's a tie-in and it's not even important to 1 million, so it didn't matter what he did. So we get to look into the future at what happens to Lobo. So, in the 853rd century, according to Lobo issue 1 million, everything is outlawed by... like, anything evil is outlawed by the Justice Legion. Weapons, bounty hunting, killing... and so Lobo has nothing, and the only way that he can make money is by becoming a circus showcase. So, yeah, he's become like a show for people to go and watch, where he's just in a cage and all the tourists come in and they all point and laugh at him and make fun of him because since he's no longer bounty hunting, Lobo has just gotten like really fat and he just sits around smoking and drinking all day. And the tourists start like egging him on and calling him fat and stuff, and they're just like, oh, there's no way he can break out of that. Like, are they like, is there no way he can break through that cage? And the ringmaster is just like, nah, there's no way he can get through there. Like, the showman is like, no, he can't get through. The cage is unbreakable. And Lobo breaks through the cage and he scares them all away. And the showman is like, the only way you're gonna calm him down is if you give him all your money. So like, give all your money to me and then run away. And so they all give all their money to the showman and he'll run away. And it's revealed that this is like, Lobo is in on this. This is how they make money. They pretend that Lobo is stuck in this cage and then they scare all the people into giving them all their money. But Lobo's done with the future. Like, he's done with all these laws. He wants to go back into bounty hunting. They have him drinking weak booze instead of strong booze. Like, strong booze is his favorite, and they have him... the brand is literally called strong booze, and now it's called weak booze because of the laws. And then this really hot woman shows up, she looks a lot like what's her name? She looks a lot like Maxima. And so she shows up and she's got a big case of money. She's like, I heard you used to be a bounty hunter. Well, I have all this money, like millions of dollars, for you to help me chase down this man named Marlo Perverso. And Lobo is like, are you insane, miss? Like, Marlo Perverso doesn't exist. And she's like, no, I know he exists because I used to date him. And so Lobo agrees to taking the money and hunting down Marlo Perverso, getting back into the bounty hunter game, and just not listening to the laws anymore. Like, yeah, the laws still exist, but Lobo's just like, screw the laws. I'm a bounty hunter. I'm getting back in the game. His showman tries to get a cut in the money, and Lobo is like, screw you, and like makes the guy poke his own eyes out, and then leaves him on the ground, and the guy's just like, And so Lobo heads off to get his motorcycle and his guns, which have all been locked away in a Tesseract by the Justice Legion. On his way there, he finds a bunch of guys just having a good time and dancing, and he just decides to throw a frag grenade to scare them. It doesn't go off because it's outlawed, so he just does it to be a dick. And then he heads to Al's Diner, which is the diner that he always goes to, and in the future, Al's Diner has transcended reality. So now you just think about what you want, and you get it. And Lobo's just like, man, I wish diners would just go back to being normal. What's that teleporter over there for? And Al's just like, it's for inanimate objects only. And Lobo's just like, I don't care, I'm using it. And he goes into the teleporter and teleports away, and Al's just like, Lobo always finds a way to destroy my diner. I really hope this is the one time he doesn't blow it up. And that's when his waitress reveals that she donned a disguise and went to Lobo and told him to go after Marlo Perverso, and that Marlo Perverso really doesn't exist, and that she's just sent him on a wild goose chase so he'll never be a problem for Al ever again. And Al's just like, I hope you're right. So Lobo makes his way into the Tesseract, where he finds his motorcycle and all his guns just laid out everywhere. He picks them up and he tries to shoot his way out of the Tesseract, but he can't figure a way to get out, and so he just uses his pure strength to rip his way through the Tesseract, and he ends up in another dimension, which is the headquarters of the intergalactic JLWB, which stands for Justice Legion Wannabes. And they are essentially a parody of the Justice League, led by Wonder Woman, as like Wanda. So she's basically just looks like Wonder Woman. And then there's Clayman and Captain Karate. And so Lobo shows up and is like, I'm looking for Marlo Perverso. Do you know where he is? And they're just like, bounty hunting is against the law, so we're going to have to take you down, Lobo. So they start trying to fight Lobo. Lobo starts shooting them. He's like, I'll kill you if you don't tell me where Marlo Perverso is. And they all have like their own force fields, so they're just like, your guns aren't going to do anything to us. And so Lobo just throws a giant like nuke grenade at them and kills all of them. He just kills them all. And while he's fighting them, there's this thing known as the Mind Meld program, which sends thoughts out to this race known as they're like the people of the Magellanic Clouds. It sends thoughts out to them, usually like peaceful thoughts that they just like vibe to. But because Lobo is there causing all sorts of chaos, it starts sending his thoughts to them, and so they go from peaceful to just all-out war, fighting and killing each other. And then Marlo Perverso shows up, because it turns out that Marlo Perverso is a real person. And so Lobo tries to kill Marlo, and Marlo tries to kill Lobo. They both shove grenades in each other's mouths, and then Marlo is like, I'm gonna cut you open. Like, even though you're immortal, I'll cut you open anyway, and it will take years for your pieces to come back together. So Lobo blasts Marlo in the face with his rocket boot, because he has like a little rocket that comes out of his boot. He shoots it into Marlo's face, and that's when it's revealed that Marlo isn't a real person, because this Marlo was just Clayman the entire time. And Lobo's just like, where's the real Marlo? And Clayman's like, Marlo's not a real person. And Lobo's like, he has to be, because he's in your systems, and also you know what he looks like. And Clayman is like, all right, like Marlowe's been trapped in like this black hole, but once you go in there, there's no way out. And Lobo is like, I don't care. I got sent on a mission. I kind of just want to get away from this universe, so if I get trapped in a black hole forever, that's a good plan B for me. And so he picks up Clayman, he rolls him into a ball, and he throws him into a nearby wall, killing him. Poor Clayface. Rip Clayface. Or Clayman. And then Lobo heads into the black hole that Marlo Perverso is said to be in, because he is apparently a real person. And back at Al's diner, a gift for Lobo appears from the Magellanic clouds, and Al figures out that it's a bomb, so he's like, quick, run! And they run out of Al's diner, and Al's diner explodes. And he's like, how the hell does he do it? And his waitress is like, I wonder where he is now. And it's revealed that Lobo is on his motorcycle in the black hole, fighting little fat green demons, searching for Marlo Perverso. And he's like, I don't care if I never find him. This place is gonna be a hoot. And that's the end of the time. It ends right there. Just a whole lot of fun. I think the thing about Lobo is that, like, when you're reading Lobo, you're not expecting some Grant Morrison level story that has layers upon layers. You're just expecting like an insane story that is just fun and full of like, and it's not going to be for everyone, you know. Yeah, pretty good tie-in, especially for a tie-in that doesn't really tie into the event at all, other than being sent into the future, like set in the future. Pretty good. All right, the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Hitman 1 million, which is Hitman 1 million is written by Garth Ennis with art by John McCrea and Pat Prentice. I've done one Garth Ennis story before this. I did Hitman's debut annual when covering Bloodlines, and I remember liking that one a lot. Garth Ennis has been writing Hitman for a while now. I think he does a total of like 50 issues, and he ended the series with Hitman dying. Like the series ended, and I think since then Hitman hasn't returned as a character. Like he's stayed dead. Like Garth Ennis may have come back to write like a mini series or two every now and then, but I'm pretty sure they always took place at a point in time before Hitman died. He's one of those few characters that just stayed dead. Yeah, so we've got Hitman 1 million, and I'm just going to say that this tie-in is much like the Lobo one and the Creeper one, and there are a bunch of tie-ins in this event that are just bonkers, nuts, off the walls. Like the writers are just like on crack while writing them, and this is definitely one of them. But I think this comes from a case of the opposite of like Alan Grant, who was having fun doing the Lobo tie-in. With this one, it feels like Garth Ennis hated doing this and had to do it, and he was like, if you're gonna make me do this tie-in, then I am going to just shit on this page, and just like, I'm just gonna shit out this hastily made tie-in because I have to. Not to say that it's bad, because it's Hitman, and Garth Ennis still finds a way to add his style to it that makes it interesting. You know, like, no matter how shit The Boys is as a comic book, it's still interesting to read because of how insane it is. And that's the case with this one too. Right. Hitman 1 million. Okay, let's do this. So, it begins with these groups of... just a group of nerds. There's a little fat nerd whose name is Gwant. He has a friend whose name is Gooch. I'm not kidding, that's his name. His name is Gooch. and he just spends all day huffing drugs. He's got like this weird thing that he sticks up his nose and he gets high off of it. And what they are trying to do is they are trying to teleport a superhero from the past to the future so that they can get an artifact of clothing from them, and they can use that to gain their powers and become superheroes, because that's what people do in the future. So they turn on their teleporter and they bring in Hitman, who they believe to be an insane legend. Not just Hitman, Tommy Monaghan. They bring him in, and when he shows up, he immediately vomits everywhere. He vomits, and then he vomits again because he's not used to being teleported. And they tell Tommy that they have like this thing that gets, in the future they have this thing that gets put in your body so that when you vomit, your vomit gets teleported away, so you never vomit. As soon as the urge to vomit comes up, it gets teleported away, and then Tommy vomits again. They talk about how Hitman is a legend who has met characters like Batman and fought people in the past, like supervillains and stuff. And then Gwant is just like, "Where's your superhero costume?" And Tommy puts a gun to his head and is like, "This is my outfit. I'm not some stupid superhero." And then this little furball thing comes up to Tommy. I'm not kidding. This is how the story goes, by the way. I'm not just being and then, I'm not skipping much. This is what happens. This little furball thing with two eyes on it comes up to Tommy, and Tommy's like, "What the hell is that?" And Gwant is like, "Well, in the past, as time went on, scientists realized that cats just kept getting eaten by dogs, run over by cars, and, thrown into walls and killed by their owners. So they invented an indestructible cat. And so this little furball thing pees on Tommy, and so he's just like, good, and he kicks it out the window. Just kicks this little cute thing out the window, 20 floors. And then, and then Tommy asks why Gwant brought him to the future, and Gwant explains that it's because he wants his powers. And that's when a guy who saved, he finds, a superhero jumps through the broken window because he saved the indestructible cat. And he's like, "I'm gonna make you pay for trying to kill this adorable thing." And Tommy's just like, "Who the hell are you?" And this guy's like, "I'm Gunfire. I got my powers from the original Gunfire in the past. Remember Gunfire from Bloodlines? He has the ability to turn anything into a gun." He shows up and he's like, "I'm gonna turn you into the authorities for being such a douche." And then Hitman, just while lighting a cigarette, just shoots Gunfire in the kneecap. He's just like, "Ah!" And he goes to grab his med pack, and he's like, "Ah, I turned my med pack into a gun." So he shoots himself in the shoulder by accident. And then he's just like, "Ah, I just turned my ass into a hand grenade." And then Gunfire blows up and he dies. He blows up. He's dead. Blood splatters everywhere. And then a bunch of other heroes come in, and they're just like, "We heard Gunfire died, and so we've all come to take down the man responsible for killing him." Because Gwant is just like, when one superhero appears, all of them come. That's just normal. And then this group known as the Over Patrol show up. Alright, so this is where things get a little bit hectic. I've got to prepare for this. So the Over Patrol show up, who are a parody of the Doom Patrol. And they get into a little bit of an argument with the other group of superheroes. And one of his names is Lord Scurrier. And he turns to his friend whose name is Blind Bastard. He's like, "What is it, Blind Bastard?" And Blind Bastard is like, "My radios are tingling. Rockshaft isn't Rockshaft. He's Carve Up." And so it's revealed that Rockshaft is actually Carve Up. And that the Over Patrol are actually a group known as the League of Schweinhunds, who are a group of German Nazi superheroes, I guess. And then, so, there's this one superhero woman who sees one of the guys and is like, "Black Panther, but I'm pregnant with your child. And he's like, you are? And then one of them is like, but I'm secretly a woman. I always have been. Like, I'm not kidding. This is literally panel. So I'm going to read this panel to panel just so you can see how insane this is. I am not going to skip anything. So, yeah, it starts off with Blind Bastard saying, you know, my raiders are tingling. Rockshaft isn't Rockshaft. He is Carve Up. So you saw through our deception, Overforce, but too late. The League of Schweinhunds. Ja, mine foolish friends, know our rage. Black Panzer, but I'm pregnant with your child. You are? But I'm secretly a woman. I always have been. Hang on, so I'm actually not the Human Inferno? Damn it! And the Human Inferno just dies from being on fire. Well, the guy that thought he was the Human Inferno. To battle dogs, and damned be he who asks for quarter, and none shall say enough. If I can just punch the other guy in the mouth, it'll hurt him. Gonna open me up a can of whoop-ass. Thwip, 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 thwip. Yeah. Trash the punks in the time it makes to play... Trash the punks in the time it takes to play a 9-inch Nails track. I have the power. And if you're wondering what that was, it was all of the heroes fighting each other. You wouldn't be able to know that from the dialogue because it's batshit crazy, but that's what's happening. They're all fighting each other now. Some lady with an energy sword comes in and is like, yeah. And then this guy that looks like the Thing is like, exaggerate! As he's like hitting a bunch of the superheroes. And then Hitman throws a grenade and is like, heads up, true believers. And he kills everyone in the room. He throws a grenade and blows everyone up and they all die. So 30 seconds later, Hitman is just like, have I missed anybody? And Grant comes out and he's like, nope, you killed everyone. And then Hitman is like, you keep asking for my powers, but the truth is that you don't want my powers because they're useless. And I'm not a superhero. I'm just a hitman. And I'm probably, like, I have no legend in the future. You brought the wrong guy. Because I died 80,000 years ago. And I probably left no legacy behind. Because I don't care about leaving a legacy. As long as I keep my friends safe and I don't turn into a dirtbag, I don't care what happens to me. I might get shot in the head twice or something at some point in the future. And then he tells Gwant to send him back to the past. And Gwant tries to, he's like, first you gotta give us your powers. And Hitman's just like, what if I kill you? And Gwant is like, well, if you kill us, we won't be able to send you back. And Hitman's like, I don't think you have the stones to make this kind of deal. And so they send him back into the past. And then Gwant decides to try and bring a different superhero to the future. And so it's like 2 days later, Gwant, Nigel, Trevor, and Gooch did try again and get their machine to retrieve a subject from Earth's distant past. They chose a mighty warrior whose deeds were legend, whose battles for truth and justice echoed down the ages in 1,000 tales of daring and bravado. His soul was pure, his heart was true, he was a hero. He was Etrigan the Demon. And then Etrigan the Demon kills all of them. He shows up in the future and he just, rips Gooch's head off and burns everyone, and except for the cat, because the cat's indestructible, so he survived. But everyone else gets killed by Etrigan the Demon, and that's the end of the tie-in. That's the end of, Hitman 1 million. Yes. If there's one thing I can say about this, that is that it reeks of, The Boys. This, I wouldn't be surprised if this very book is what inspired Garth Ennis to write The Boys, because it is pretty much a prelude to The Boys. It is a rough cut version of The Boys with all the ridiculous superhero parodies, nothing really, everyone just being really bad and just having this really black comedy-based humor. But unlike The Boys, there are moments in this that are so ridiculous that it's actually funny. I'm talking about the comic The Boys, not the show. The show's great. The comic sucks. This comic sucks. At the start, before I started talking about this, I was like, it wasn't that bad, but after reading it again and talking about it again, No, it's bad. I don't like this. It's probably the worst tie-in I've read so far because half of it doesn't make any sense. There was that whole sequence where all the superheroes show up, and I read that word for word, every single dialogue, every what was happening, and it's hard to even know what's happening. I literally had to be like, they're all fighting now, by the way, because the dialogue doesn't give you any sense that that's what's happening, because they're all just saying the most random shit, and it's not funny. It's frustrating as hell to read, and I'd almost like to take this to Garth Ennis and be like, why did you do this? Like, why did you write this? Because, he just didn't try at all, and I think this is him getting too overindulgent in his Garth Ennis stuff, Peter Tomasi was the editor for this, so I also blame him for how this turned out, because he was watching Garth Ennis write this, and he just let him do this. So, shame on you, Tomasi, for letting this come into existence. Probably I'm going to go as far as to say, this is the worst tie-in that I've ever read. Ever. And I've read a lot of tie-ins. It's worse than the ones that were just boring, because at least those ones made sense. It's just sucked. It might even be one of the worst things Garth Ennis has ever written, because at least The Boys has dialogue that makes sense. But yeah, that's enough about Hitman 1 Million. I'm never going to talk about it. I'm never going to talk about it again. I'm never going to read it again. And the next tie-in that we're going to be reading instead is Man of Tomorrow, issue 1 million. Written by Mark Schultz, with art by Georges Ginty and Denise Rodia and Dennis Shank. So yeah, let's get straight into Man of Tomorrow, issue 1 million, which hopefully is a step up from Hitman. I imagine so. It's a Superman comic. There's no way it's going to be as bad as that Hitman one. Jesus. So Man of Tomorrow, issue 1 million, mostly serves as just a massive lore dump on the history of Solaris. History that we already know enough about, so I don't really need to go deep into it. If you really want to go deep into it, you can read this issue. I'll just summarize it up, because otherwise I'll be here forever. There's really just not very much that we don't already know. So the issue begins with Superman in his Fortress of Solitude, where he recently met Resurrection Man, and he tries to teleport away to Jupiter, but he can't teleport because Solaris is stopping him from being able to. So he decides instead to head off to find Mahol Todge, who is the Hawk commander that we met in the previous tie-in. He heads into a Tesseract where he ends up finding Mahol Todge, and Mahol Todge takes Superman to find Gerarda Olsen, who is the mayor of Metropolis in the future, and they take Clark to Lex Luthor's ancestor, where he installs a chip into Superman's head that will allow him to not have to listen to, it will stop the headnet from interfering with his powers, because he can't use his super hearing or anything while the headnet is interfering. So this chip stops that. Basically, Superman wants to learn about the history of Solaris. So they take him to this Headnet's archive library where he'll learn the truth about Solaris, and he tries to see it, but because he's from a different time period, trying to do it really hurts his head. So they decide to take him to Platinum, because she'll be able to tell Superman the history of Solaris, since he can't do it the usual way, because it's just too... The technology is too intense for him from the time period that he's from. So they go and they find Platinum, who I theorize is Lois Lane in the future. Like, that she has Lois Lane is in her, or Lois Lane is going to be in her at some point. It just feels... I just have that feeling. It's the fact that she's so... Like when Clark shows up, she immediately hugs him. It's the fact that she's so intimate with him, even though she barely knows him. Even back in the time period that they came from, like, Platinum and Superman did not interact that much. And the only way I can explain how intimate she is with him and how much she enjoys being around him is that maybe it's Lois Lane in the future. So she tells Superman the history of Solaris and the history of the Legion of Supermen, because in the future there are a lot of Supermen. They're all descendants of Clark Kent, and they all live forever, and they all become a big league of Supermen. My opinion on Superman never aging is pretty standard. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the idea of Clark Kent never aging. I am a fan of Clark Kent aging with everyone else, so that he would eventually, die of old age alongside Lois Lane, or die at a younger age because of how much he puts his life on the line. Like, it makes sense that, Clark would get into, his 50s, maybe his 60s, and that might be as old as he gets, because one day there is going to be something that attacks Earth, and that kills him. I feel like it's guaranteed. Like, he's gonna die in battle someday, saving the planet. So yeah, this whole history of it being like, oh, he lives forever, and there's a whole legion of Supermen because they all live forever, and they all fight Solaris together. Like, it's cool for this story alone, but I wouldn't want that to be Superman's canonical future. So yeah, they spend basically centuries fighting Solaris, because Solaris cannot be destroyed. Solaris is a living sun. So all they can do is try and stop it somehow, and the way they stop it is Clark sacrifices himself, and by sacrifice I mean he doesn't die, he just goes into a comatose state. But through sacrificing himself, he is able to deactivate Solaris through brute force, and they are able to reanimate Solaris as a fully controllable being. And so they can now just use Solaris to power the entire universe, instead of Solaris being evil, killing people, being a tyrant. But as we know, in the future that doesn't pan out, because Solaris tricks the heroes in the past into rebuilding him so that he can exist in the future and take over it. So in the end, their efforts to stop Solaris are futile. But that's essentially the entire history, is that Clark from the present ends up in a coma in the far future, and his descendant takes over in the 853rd century, which is the future Superman that we've been following throughout some of these comics. So he takes over the legacy of Superman, and now Clark is going to wake up. And that's interesting, because Clark already is in the future at the moment, and if we're assuming anything, it's it's pretty easy to assume that present Clark Kent is going to meet his future self. And in the Azrael comic, it was established that if you meet your future self, it does mess up the timeline. So, what's going to happen? Is Grant Morrison just going to be like, well, that's not what I think happens. It's completely fine for you to meet yourself in the future. It doesn't do anything, because this is a comic book, so it doesn't have to do anything. Or are they going to do that thing of, Superman's the only person that's not allowed to meet himself in the future because of the whole time anomaly thing? But we're going to find that out, because, yeah, that's where this tie-in ends. It ends with Superman learning the history of Solaris, and then Solaris himself appears because he's jealous of Superman, and the fact that Superman was capable of defeating him, and because he comes out and he's like, she's lying about like the story, like that's not how it went, and Clark is just like, you're just jealous, you're just making up these lies. I know what the truth is, and I'm gonna stop you, but obviously, in order to stop you, I need to get to Jupiter, but you're not letting me get there. And so Solaris is so big-headed that he's like, fine, go to Jupiter, meet up with your little Justice League friends, and I dare you to try and stop me, because you can't. It's impossible. I'm too powerful. You're not going to be able to stop me. And so Solaris' like hologram disappears after his little rant, and Platinum sends Clark to Jupiter via a teleporter so that he can reunite with the Justice League, and we will see how that pays out in DC 1 Million issue 4, the final issue of DC 1 Million, but not the final issue that we are going to be covering on this podcast, because it's not the end of the story. But yeah, let's get straight into DC 1 Million issue 4. DC 1 Million issue 4. The hopes with these events is always that the ending isn't anticlimactic and that it has a good ending. And it suffice to say, the ending to DC 1 Million is satisfying. So, right now, the Justice Legion A are stuck in the past, or the present, as it is 1998, while the Justice League are stuck in the future, in the 853rd century. So the Justice Legion are going to try and get to the future so that they can help the Justice League fight Solaris, because Solaris is there right now, and they believe that like the Justice League just aren't strong enough to fight them alone. So future Superman tries to literally punch time and punch his way through to the 853rd century, but in doing so, he ages he's aging himself. And it seems like he's going to die before he even gets there. As I said, Solaris is destroying everything. And so the Justice League are like, Solaris is incredibly dangerous, so is Vandal Savage. But we're not going to deal with Vandal Savage because we don't need to fight him. The funny thing is that, like, we've already seen the climactic battle that Vandal Savage has in this event, which is him versus Resurrection Man. He doesn't fight anyone for the rest of the event. He does serve a role in this story, but he is not the main focus of this event. He kind of gets pushed to the side. Like, his role in this story is finished, Vandal Savage's. Or at least there's one more thing that he's going to do, and then he's kind of just gone until the very end. So the Justice League are in the Justice Legion's headquarters, or at least they're on the round table, and they're literally sitting around the round table, floating in space, using Wonder Woman's... Because Wonder Woman has the invisible jet, and she's able to fabricate it from nothing. She has, like, the liquid of the invisible jet, and she can fabricate it around anything and allow it to fly. So she's fabricated it around the table that they're sitting at, and so they're just floating in space. The goal is that Green Lantern is going to go to Solaris, and the plan is that he is going to plant a black hole device inside Solaris and destroy Solaris. But then while he's trying to do this, Wally is just like, I've calculated every single possible outcome within like a matter of nanoseconds, and that plan's not going to work, so we're going to have to try something else. Meanwhile, Resurrection Man is dying. Vandal Savage has the kryptonite, which he calls the Night Fragment. He sends it to Solaris so that Solaris can use it. Because we know Solaris' plan is to kill the Prime Superman, who is currently sleeping inside the sun. Martian Manhunter appears to Resurrection Man and tells Resurrection Man that even though he's dying, his death will not be in vain, because Martian Manhunter has a plan, and it's been put into action already. And Vandal Savage and Solaris don't even know that. So, because the black hole plan isn't going to work, Kyle's getting a little bit overwhelmed by Solaris, so Superman goes in to try and help him. Because the black hole device isn't going to work, because Solaris can... Like, black holes don't work on Solaris. He's literally like, somebody tried that, like, 20,000 years ago, so it's not going to work this time. So instead, Batman tells Kyle to go inside Solaris, blow up Solaris from the inside, and then try and contain the blast from the outside. And Kyle is like, are you insane? I can't contain the blast of an entire sun. I will be obliterated. I'm not that powerful. And Batman is like, you can do anything as long as you think about it. That's how your ring works, right? Batman completely underestimating the power of the lantern ring. Like, it is powerful, but like, come on, Batman. I don't think it's that powerful. But he convinces Kyle to give it a try anyway. And future Superman continues trying to punch through time, and he manages to punch his way through just as he becomes an old frail man and almost dies. He ends up in the 851st century, and because he's back in his own time period, he is where his sun is, like the sun, and so he gets the power of the sun from the future and becomes powerful again and gets all his powers back. And then he's like, alright, let's go! I'm gonna go help Kyle Rayner with Solaris, because, you know, he needs my help. So Kyle Rayner enacts the plan of blowing up Solaris from the inside, which he does. He plants like a little bomb with like a bunch of like Kyle Rayner clones. They put like a bomb inside Solaris. They blow him up, and then Kyle tries to contain Solaris in a giant construct safe. But as he creates the safe, something breaks through it, and it's the night fragment, the kryptonite. Solaris has shot it out, and it's managed to break its way through Kyle's safe. But he still managed to contain Solaris, but the strain of the construct is starting to, like, melt his brain. So he's got blood coming out of his nose, and he's like, I can't do this, I need help. And that's when future Superman shows up and is like, don't worry, I'll help you with my plasma... like my force vision barrier to help contain your construct and the blast. So with their powers combined, they contain the blast of Solaris, and Solaris is completely destroyed. Or not yet. No, he's not completely destroyed, sorry, but he's badly hurt. So the kryptonite gets shot into the sun, and that's when they realize that, like, Solaris has just killed Superman. He's succeeded. But then Martian Manhunter, from the future, says, I tricked Vandal Savage and Solaris into thinking that that's a piece of kryptonite, when in actuality, it wasn't kryptonite. It was actually the long-lost Green Lantern ring from the future, the very last one, disguising itself as a piece of kryptonite. So what Solaris has done is he's shot a Green Lantern ring into the sun and given it to Superman Prime. So Superman Prime emerges from the sun wearing the final Green Lantern ring. And from being in the sun for so long, Superman Prime has gone completely gold. So he's just this golden Superman with a Green Lantern ring. He comes out, he grabs what's left of Solaris. Like, Solaris is, like, you know, barely holding on, and he just grabs him, and he crushes him in a giant construct hand. Just crushes Solaris, destroying him once and for all. And that's it. Solaris is destroyed. The universe is at peace. The Justice Legion and the Justice League reunite. And Superman, like, present-day Superman is like, I gotta get out of here because I can't meet my future self because who knows what's gonna happen. It literally says that. It's like, present-day Superman has to avoid meeting Superman Prime because the universe might fold in on itself. So they head back to their present day, and then we get a bit of a monologue from Carl Rayner, who basically just sums up kind of what happened after Prime Superman was awoken. So after Prime Superman woke up, they took the core of Solaris, which was all that was left, and using future Superman magic, with the help of the... his name is like Lixum Litpicus. Apparently he's the Superman of the Fifth Dimension. With his help, they, like, using the core and what's left of Solaris, they created a woman for Prime Superman to be with, who, you know, he's gold, she's silver. It's supposed to be Lois Lane, presumably. She's in the image of Lois Lane. So first thing he did was make himself a woman. And then the second thing he did was recreate his planet Krypton. So you can definitely tell where Superman's priorities are. Where he's just like, oh, I gotta make the woman first, and then make my home planet. You know, male urges, huh? And so yeah, he reunites with Lois, or like this resurrected version of her. I still think my theory of it being like, oh, Platinum was like Lois the whole time, like that would have been a great reveal. I'm fine with this one. It just would have mattered. I feel like there would have been a lot more, like it would have been a much better reveal if it was like, oh, Platinum in the future had Lois's conscience in her, and that's why she was so eager to help Superman. And so but that's not revealed until, like, you know, Prime Superman wakes up, and then, you know, Platinum shows up, and that's when she's like, it's me, Clark, like, Lois, you know, I'm in, you know, at some point in the future, they put my conscience into Platinum to keep me alive, because, you know, I always hoped that I would reunite with you. Like, that would have been great. That would have been a great reveal. And, you know, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense, it's a comic book, so it doesn't matter. But this is fine. So, yeah, using Solaris's core, they recreate the planet Krypton 2, and then Clark reunites with Jor-El and, is it Lara? I think is the name of his mum. And it's happily ever after for Superman Prime. You know, it's presumed that he then marries this Lois Lane that he created. Lois Prime, I guess you could call her. And then we end with the JLA just coming together around the table, talking about this crazy adventure that they've been on. Superman heads off with Martian Manhunter, and he's just like... So Grant Morrison kind of keeps it open where they're like, just in case there are people that aren't a fan of the idea of Superman living forever. You know, Grant Morrison was thinking of people like me, where, like, I'm fine with the Superman Prime future, but it is not my preferred future for Clark Kent. I would much prefer him to die in the present alongside everyone else, whether it be of old age or through self-sacrifice. I would much prefer that over him living for over 80,000 years before he finally gets to have peace, be around someone he loves. So Grant Morrison puts a little bit into this for those people like me, where Superman says, like, he's like, I'm not too sure about the idea of living forever. And Martian Manhunter's like, well, that's fine, Clark, because the future isn't set in stone. And I think that's Grant Morrison just saying, like, any writers in the future are probably going to come and change this future that I've created for Superman. So I'm just going to leave it open and be like, the future changes all the time. It's never set in stone. It's definitely Grant Morrison being like, I'm not upset with people changing things. It's comic books. It's going to happen. And then at the very end, after that, we end with Vandal Savage. After he teleported away to safety, after sending the lantern ring to Solaris, he ends up on a planet that he sees is familiar. He's like, what planet is this? And then a message comes through on his teleporter gauntlets. And it's like, you're on Earth. It's September 1st, 1998. And it turns out that he's in Montevideo. And it's the date that he sent the Rocket Red to destroy Montevideo. So he's ended up he ends up killing himself. It's the one that he sent to Montevideo to destroy everything. And it turns out that in the far future, Vandal Savage would be sent back to that point in time and die. And that it was actually Chronos who tricked him. He tampered with the gauntlets. He knew that Vandal Savage was going to get it in the future, and he tampered with them so that Vandal Savage would be sent to Montevideo and get destroyed alongside it. And so that's Vandal Savage's ending, is that he's doomed to die. He is doomed to kill himself and not even know it. And that's it. It ends with a little text box that says, in the 853rd century, Mitch Shelley, the Resurrection Man, dies with a smile on his face because he knows that Vandal Savage got what came to him. And so that's the end of DC 1 Million, issue 4. Pretty good. Pretty great. I'm happy. I'm satisfied with that ending. It didn't have some kind of like there was like a battle between Solaris and a bunch of heroes, but there wasn't some kind of like grand one-on-one fight between like Solaris and Superman Prime. They went with more of a realistic route of like Superman Prime is so powerful that he came forth and he just destroyed Solaris immediately, and like Superman Prime's debut and awakening is very satisfying, and so it's just a good ending to it, and then Clark Kent gets a happy ending in the far future. Everyone gets a happy ending. Vandal Savage gets a shit ending, the one he deserves. Pretty good. And I'm a big fan of Kyle Rayner serving such a major role in this. Like, it really shows that Grant Morrison doesn't have any bias towards characters like Batman and Superman. Like, Superman doesn't... Like Superman Prime and the future Superman do a lot in this comic, but the regular present-day Superman doesn't do much. Instead, Grant Morrison chose to focus more on Kyle kind of being the main hero of the final issue, and Batman kind of being his mentor. And I really appreciate that. I also appreciate that Resurrection Man did appear in this, and that his appearance in the Resurrection Man comic it wasn't pointless. It actually led somewhere. We got some finality to that, and I actually called it. I said Martian Manhunter is appearing to Resurrection Man, and it turns out that actually happened. So I'm glad that my wishes were answered. That what I wanted to happen is what ended up happening. It's like Grant Morrison knows what you want. And I very much appreciate it. At least they knew what I wanted from this, and I appreciate that. But yeah, that's it for the main DC Million event. However, there is a sort of epilogue to this story, and that is DC 1 Million, the 80-page giant, which was a special released like right after DC 1 Million as kind of like an epilogue, with a bunch of stories in it that are going to kind of tie up this event, any loose plot threads, and you're just kind of seeing like what happens after issue 4, after the universe has been saved. So yeah, let's find out what happens in DC 80-page giant. So the first story that we're going to be covering in the 80-page special is System's Finest Batman Superman. This is an origin story of future Batman and Superman becoming the world's finest in the 853rd century. So, future Superman is going to disguise himself as Alchemo, a villain from the future, and future Batman is going to disguise himself as Pico Moth, a future villain of Batman's, obviously based on Killer Moth. Robin the Toy Wonder even says, like, why are you disguising yourself as your worst enemy? Because Killer Moth is often considered to be Batman's worst rogue. Even though I love Killer Moth because he's just that, like, cheesy, bad villain. Also, I almost forgot to say, this story is written by Mark Millar, with art by Mike Wieringo and Richard Case. Mike Wieringo you would know from, he did The Flash. That was, like, his main thing that he did for a long time. And he's done Fantastic Four, too. Those are, like, his two biggest projects, I would say. And Mark Millar, obviously, from a lot of stuff. And this is a good story, I would say, especially because they only have 10 pages of real estate to work with, because this is an 80-page giant with a lot of stories in it. So Batman disguises as Pico Moth, Superman disguises as Alchemo, and they're both going to head separately, by the way. They're separately heading towards a meeting held by the Superman Revenge Squad, and a meeting set by the Batman Revenge Squad. And when they get there, they realize that it's for both of them. And that, like, they were both told to come to this meeting because Batman's rogues and Superman's rogues are teaming up together. The meeting is being held by OWAC, who is a female version of OMAC, and is apparently future Superman's arch nemesis, and the Laughing Virus, not to be confused with the Laughter, who was said to be Batman's arch nemesis. I mean, future Batman has had 3 arch nemesises, or arch nemesi. There was the Laughter, then there was the guy whose name I forgot, but he was like a mixture between the Joker and Man-Bat. And now there's this, Laughing Virus. I'd say Laughing Virus is the most interesting out of the 3 of them because of his powers, which is the ability to not only make people laugh through his presence, like a virus, but also he can take control of people's bodies, a thing that will be demonstrated later. Right now, he just looks like a smiling, like a weirdly smiling, like he kind of looks like Ghostface, the mask, inside a computer. That's kind of what he looks like. So their goal is to... They've been communicating with these genies in the 5th dimension, and they're gonna try and, like, break the genies out, and then the genies are gonna make them all imps, so they can do whatever they want. That's their plan. And so Superman hears this, and he takes off his disguise, and it's like, that's all I needed to hear. And Pico Moth takes off his disguise, and reveals that he's Batman. And OWAC sends the ship that they're on into warp drive, and they smash directly into an island made out of kryptonite. And so Superman is weakened by it, and Batman pulls out Alchemo's alchemical wand, because Superman had it when he was disguised as Alchemo. Alchemo, there's not really much to say about him except he has this alchemical wand that can turn any substance into anything as long as it's not biological. So Batman uses it to turn the kryptonite into coal, and then they fight against OWAC and, like, knock her out. And then the Laughing Virus takes over Superman's body, but Superman uses his 10 senses to get the Laughing Virus out of his body and contain him with his Force Vision. And then Batmite appears, and then Supermite, who is just Mr. Mxyzptlk, but he calls himself Supermite now, he appears too, and he's basically like, Batmite was here the entire time pretending to be your universe, and I've been here the whole time as well, and we're going to take you back to your own time. We're going to put these villains in prison. And so they get taken back to, like, as they're being taken back to their home, like, where, like, their time, Superman and Batman greet each other properly for the first time, and they decide, hey, you're pretty cool, I enjoyed working with you, let's become a team. And World's Finest is born. And that's the whole story. It's just a fun origin story. There's not really anything deep here. It's just Mark Millar just having fun. And I was not expecting Batmite and Supermite to show up at the end, and I bet you weren't expecting Batmite and Supermite to show up at the end. But yeah, enough of that. We're moving on to the next story, which is Tales of the Legion of Executive Familiars in the Age of Solaris, Heroic Rebirth. That's the name of the story, written by Mark Schultz, with art by Georges Ginty and Dexter Vines. Georges Ginty, I feel like they did art for a different time, because I feel like I remember saying that name before. I feel like I wouldn't forget saying a name as exotic as that. So, what's there to say about Tales of the Legion of Executive Familiars? Well, first of all, the Legion of Executive Familiars is the name of the future version of the Legion of Super Pets, led by Krypton 9. I'll go through the members a little bit later, because it does introduce us to them. But the start of the story is that they are looking for a new member, and so their next member is auditioning is Googal the Infinity Mouse. And the thing with Googal is that, so first of all, they see the mouse and they say oh, you're a tiny little mouse, you can't be a member of our crew. And Crypto 9 is we don't judge things by their appearance, so just tell us who you are and what your powers are, and then we'll see if you want, we'll let you join. So first off, Google shows his knowledge of the familiars by naming them all and their history. Octus, the 8-dimensional cephalopod from the bottom of the seas of Neptune. While it is impossible for us creatures limited to a 3-dimensional perception of the universe to fully understand your powers, your weird limpet grenades have proved to be the most effective weapons. Crypto 9, canine scion of a Kryptonian legacy, able to multiply your native strength up to the 9th power as needed. Wormhole, unfathomable denizens of the black gulfs between stars with the ability to bend time and space to your command. He looks like a little worm. Phaethon and Savitar, the sun dogs, born out of Solaris' own nuclear furnace, and heir to his hydrogen-fueled power and fury, even though he doesn't exist anymore. So I guess that's not a thing anymore, because he's dead. And that's the members of the familiars. And so Wormhole is it's impressive that you know who we all are. Now, what are your powers? And that's when Googal explains that he is the last remaining member of his species, which is the white-footed mice from Earth. That they would all die out as the years go on. However, one of the gorillas, because as we know, on Earth, humans last for a long time, the gorillas last for a long time. One of the gorillas gave Googal the ability, basically put the DNA of its entire species into Googal. So Googal has the ability to become their entire species. So they can just split up into 1 million mice whenever they want to. They're just that's pretty impressive, but we don't know how that's going to be useful in any way. And then all of a sudden, something happens, and the headquarters of the Legion of Familiars is attacked by a group of energy beasts. A bunch of cat-looking creatures made out of dark matter energy attack them. The Legion fights back, and then the energy beasts reveal that the battle was actually a distraction, while one of them hid a nano bomb, a boson antimatter bomb, somewhere in the headquarters, and then it's going to blow up. And they're just how are we going to find it? We're not going to find it in time. And that's when Googal is well, if I split up into 1 million mice, we'll find it much more quickly. So Googal splits up into 1 million mice, and they all search the headquarters, probably not a million, maybe a little bit less than that. And they find the nano bomb, or the antimatter bomb, and they telepathically tell Wormhole. Wormhole teleports his way to the antimatter bomb and uses a wormhole to teleport the antimatter bomb outside of the headquarters so it can explode somewhere that is safe. And then they're all like, yay, we saved the headquarters. And I guess the energy beasts were killed or dealt with off panel, because they don't they don't say what happens to them. They just kind of just like, we hid the bomb on the headquarters, and no, they leave. That's right, they left. So was it really a win? I mean, I guess they survived, but what's stopping the energy beast from just coming back again and trying again? But yeah, that's it. That's the end. Gugao becomes a member of the Legion, and that's the end of the comic. Not bad, but also just like, it's just another fun story. There's not really anything. I feel like I would be a bit of it'd be a bit weird if I was like, this story is terrible. It's like, no, it's just, what would the Legion of Super Pets be like in the future? This is your answer. And it's also just a 10-page story, so they told a story in 10 pages, and that's fine. That's all they could do. The next story that we're going to be talking about is The Divided Self, written by Grant Morrison, with art by Cully Hamner and John Costanza. So The Divided Self is a great story. It's actually the origin of how the Atom from the 853rd century meets the Justice Legion. So, in the future, the Atom, whose name is unknown, but they were a scientist from this universe where they're all scientists. They all kind of dress like Power Rangers. Basically, this character, who I will just refer to as the Atom, I guess, he, using experimentation, gave himself the ability to split himself up into atoms. And I guess the more he splits, the smaller he gets, or he's just small to begin with. They don't really explain it. He's small, and he can split himself up into atoms. He got those powers from the experiments, but in doing so, he's created a singularity, and the singularity is threatening to destroy his entire universe. So, the love of his life and all of the people in his universe send him into the singularity in hopes that he can use his powers to stop it. They send him in like a cube of gold alloy, and then he splits up his atoms in an attempt to stop the singularity, but he fails, and his universe is eaten up by another universe, and he ends up in that other universe. And so he swears to his people that he will find them and reunite with them eventually. And it turns out that he's telling this story to Superman Prime, because the universe that he's ended up in is Superman Prime's universe, where the Justice Legion A are. And Superman Prime is like, it's okay, you've lost everyone, but I'm opening this place to you. You can stay here as long as you want until you find your people. And the Atom is like, thank you, I'm happy that you are offering me this, and in return I will help you as much as I can as a member of your Legion. And so Atom is introduced to the rest of the Justice Legion, and he becomes a new member of the Justice Legion, and they go off on adventures together, while Atom hopes that one day he will find a way to bring back his universe and everyone alongside it. And that's the whole story. It's as simple as that. And it didn't really need to be more than that. I just enjoyed this story a lot. Even though the Atom isn't a super deep character, his story is very tragic in this, and it's still enjoyable to read. It's still just like a nice origin story, and who knows? Maybe there's another story in this 80-page giant where we expand a little bit more on the Atom. I think there's another Justice Legion story coming up eventually that the Atom might feature in. I guess we'll find out, but that's not the next story that we're going to be covering, because the next story in this special that we're covering is Head Games, which is a Justice Legion Y, because it's the Young Justice from the future story, written by Chuck Dixon, with art by Drew Johnson and Rich Faber. So Head Games isn't that interesting of a story, not really. Like, it's fine. It's probably the least good story. Like, it's not bad. It's just the least interesting story of the ones I've all read. Essentially, it's all about the Young Justice trying to deal with the aftermath of one of the previous Batman issues where Robin the Toy Wonder had been put in a state of near death. Like, his system was shutting down and he was dying. So, future Superboy and future Impulse plan to go inside Robin the Toy Wonder and try to bring him back to life. So Impulse goes inside his head, and while he's there, he comes across a giant version of Robin the Toy Wonder who tries to kill him. He then summons a bunch of, like, classic... Well, to them, they are classic Batman characters like Nightwing, Batman, Alfred, Azrael, Robin, and Huntress. And they all attack Impulse. And Superboy gets told that if Impulse doesn't get out of there soon, he's going to die because Robin the Toy Wonder is absorbing his energy. So Superboy gets sent into Robin the Toy Wonder's body. And he gets attacked by Robin the Toy Wonder. But Superboy fights back against him. And then the giant Robin the Toy Wonder breaks up into a bunch of little miniature versions. And Superboy's like, how am I going to figure out which one's the real one? And then he gets picked up by the giant Robin the Toy Wonder, and Superboy manages to talk Robin the Toy Wonder into waking up. Like, he basically just has a go at him and is like, don't kill me, just come back to life, Robin. And he does. He wakes up, and it's all good. And they're all happy endings. Robin the Toy Wonder is awake, Impulse and Superboy are finally out and free, and... that's it. That's the whole story. Like I said, not really a lot goes on in this one. It's fine. It's just not a lot to it. It's just like, oh, they go inside Robin the Toy Wonder, they almost die, they wake him up, done. Like, I could have just summarized it like that, but, you know, had to do a little bit more than that. But that's the end of that story. I mean, what can you expect from Chuck Dixon? When he's not writing Nightwing, it seems like he's just kind of like doing whatever. The next story that we're going to be talking about is a future Aquaman story. The Aquaman from the 853rd century has his own story in this special called Deep Cover, written by Ian Edginton and Flint, with art by Flint Henry. The problem with some of these stories taking place in the future and the writers just being able to do whatever they want is that some of them just are really hard to make sense of and to understand what's going on. Especially when I'm talking about characters who only exist in one event and that event only. Characters like future Aquaman, who has no real character outside of the fact that he's just Aquaman from the future. So talking into an entire story about this guy is just kind of like not that interesting. So if I say any names of characters, I'm talking about their future versions. I'm not talking about the versions from the present. So Aquaman is meeting with Tempest because they believe that the Oza are responsible. The Oza I'm not even going to explain what they are because the book doesn't. The Oza are a type of creature that apparently sucks the fluid out of other creatures when feasting on them until there's nothing but bones left. The Oza are all gone, and a bunch of people have been... like, a bunch of creatures are being killed, and nothing but their bones are being left. But Aquaman is like, I'm having a hard time believing that it was the Ozas responsible, because they're not here. So I'm gonna go looking to see who's really behind this. And while I'm gone, none of you, like, if any of you dare to attack the Ozus ones, you'll meet my wrath, because, you know, I don't want us attacking an innocent party of creatures without proof that they were responsible. So Aquaman heads off in search for whoever's responsible. It doesn't really explain why he goes where he does. He heads into, like, the deep parts of the trenches of the ocean. He just happens to know where to go, like where he needs to be for the story to play out, I guess. Because he heads down there and he finds that there's more creatures that have had the energy sucked out of them, and that's when it's revealed that there's this group of cephalopods that were responsible for this. Specifically, its name is Scavenger. Is like this giant cephalopod creature thing, and it's been killing all these creatures and like sucking all their juices out. And Scavenger is being ordered around by his mother, which is Black Manta. So it's this Black Manta from the future. Is there anything to say about who this Black Manta is? No. There's no explanation as to who this is whatsoever. They didn't appear in the main event. They only appear here. The only thing we know about this Black Manta is that they don't look like the present-day Black Manta at all. There is no resemblance between the two of them. And they don't have the powers. Like, they don't even have similar powers. And they are friends with the Laughing Virus from the previous story, who is Batman's new arch-nemesis in the future. And God Dice? Was that his name? The Two-Face from the future that was a dice with like 6 faces on it. He's friends with them. Like, she's friends with them. Black Manta. And her plan is to use a Tesseract to free the Laughing Virus and Godface, or God Dice, from prison. And Aquaman fights Scavenger and defeats Black Manta, and just as all things seem to be in a dire situation, because like the Tesseract opens up and Aquaman thinks that the Laughing Virus and God Dice are coming through, it turns out that the person coming through the Tesseract is actually Batman from the future. The future Batman. And he reveals that he knew what was going on. He knew the plan that Black Manta had, and he stopped it from happening. He made sure that the Laughing Virus and God Dice didn't get out of prison. And so Aquaman returns to Tempest and finds that the Ozus ones, have all returned because they are free to, you know, they really were innocent and now they're free to just continue living their lives. And that's the whole story. There isn't really anything else to say about it, and I kind of just want to move on from it because I just didn't really care. I read this whole thing and I was like, what is even happening? If you're interested in it, then check it out, but personally, I would recommend this be one that you skip because it's just not that interesting. And I like Aquaman, but I don't care about his future self who has no character. And like, if they were to do a mini-series where they could expand a little bit more on him, I'd be happy about that. But you can't, there's only so much you can do in a 10-page story to make me care enough about the Aquaman from the 853rd century, who doesn't even have a name other than Aquaman. So, the next story is A Day in the Lives, written by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, with art by Norm Brayfogle and Carla Feeney. Right. My opinions on this story. First of all, it's not even really a story, it's just kind of like future Superman and Resurrection Man, Mitch Shelley, just doing a bunch of different errands. Like, just doing a bunch of different things. And you heard that right, Resurrection Man. So it turns out Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning just kind of ruined the ending of DC 1 Million issue 4, Resurrection Man's ending, where in this story, they're just like, oh, he didn't die. Martian Manhunter just happened to get the virus out of his device after the end of issue 4, so he survived. He's alive, and he's reduced to being Superman's computer, who just tells Superman, like, he's basically Superman's, like, command center guy, and he just tells Superman where things are, and Superman goes and deals with it. Not a fan of this choice. It just felt like Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning were like, how dare you kill off our character, Grant Morrison? We're gonna just say that he survived in our little story and make it canon that he didn't die. Even though his ending in DC 1 Million came full circle, and it was a great ending. You know, Vandal Savage was dead, and Resurrection Man was able to die happily knowing that Vandal Savage was finally killed. And he was able to die laughing at Vandal, being like, haha, you killed yourself before he died. Like, he died in peace. And they've just come and they've undone it and ruined it, in my opinion. But yeah, the whole story is Superman doing a bunch of things. So the first thing he does is he goes and fixes this ship known as the Zanzibar, which is flying over Neptune. The next thing he does is he gets back a whole bunch of stolen dream crystals, which he takes to the silicates of Twor, so that they can continue dreaming like they usually do. He then goes and captures Parasite with Batman, and after that, this is just like one singular image. Like, these are basically just splash page after splash page of Superman doing something. After that, Superman goes and deals with civil riots among the elemental beings of Draco, which have led to seismic and climatic upheaval. Legion representatives are on site to calm the unrest. So, like, he goes and deals with that. How does he deal with that? Well, we don't know. He just does it. He just deals with it. And then Superman goes and fights Metallo with Wonder Woman, and in the future there's like hundreds of Metallos, so he goes and fights them in space with Wonder Woman. And then Brainiac demolishes a Tesseract in the habitats of Earth's southern hemisphere, so Superman has to go and save all the people there. And then after that, a Deceiver virus has begun to degrade the info turbines of Mercury. HeadNet can report that a digitized Superman is en route to purge the data handling lightware. So Superman goes there and he deals with that. And then Resurrection Man discovers that Mongol has been doing some shady stuff in the background, and they've been wondering what he's been doing. And it turns out that he's been working with Toyman, who we never meet in this. He's just mentioned by name. And that Toyman has sent a tiny little toy rocket that is supposed to find Resurrection Man and kill him. And so when it gets to him, Resurrection Man kills himself, gets a new power, and stops the little toy rocket by blasting it. Like, he stops it in a force field, and then Superman shows up and destroys it. And then he goes, alright, what's next? And Resurrection Man tells him what his next job is going to be, and Superman heads off to go do it. And that's the whole story. And, look, if Resurrection Man hadn't died at the end of DC 1 Million issue 4, I probably wouldn't have had as much issue with this story as I do, but it just felt kind of pointless, where it was just like, instead of him having a great ending, we just have this epilogue of like, oh, he survived, and now he's just telling Superman, he's basically just given Superman jobs to do, and that's it. That's all Shelley gets to do for the rest of his life. And it's just sad. Like, kind of wish that he did die, because, like I said, it was a good ending for him. He died happily. He died peacefully, knowing that Vandal Savage was finally dead. So, I know you must have been incredibly attached to that character, Dan and Andy. I know you were both probably very attached to Resurrection Man, and you didn't like the idea of him being dead. But you probably should have left him dead. You shouldn't have brought him back. So the final story that we're talking about in this special, and the final story of this episode, is Crisis 1 Million, written by Grant Morrison with art by Dusty Abell and Jim Royal. Now, this is definitely supposed to be Grant's attempt at a kind of a parody of DC 1 Million, where they are like, crises are already insane. And, crises are often going to be all of the universes colliding, fighting with each other and all that, so I'm going to do that, except it's going to be even crazier and wackier than it normally would be, because it's DC 1 million, so I got to imagine what the 1 millionth crisis of DC would be like, and it would be insane, it would be wacky, it would be goofy, and so that's kind of what Grant Morrison is going for. So it begins with the Justice Legion A, taking a group known as the Super Syndicate, who are from the mirror universe of Quad, where good and evil are reversed. So basically, instead of Superman, you've got Superwoman. Instead of Batman, you got Owlwoman. Sound familiar? Because it is. It's very similar to Earth 3, but it's not Earth 3. It's a different thing. So they're being taken on a tour around the JLA headquarters, and they just wanted to go back to their place because they don't like hanging around the JLA. They only did it because they had to, because their JLA helped them fight against their enemies. So they head back to their universe. And then Titano, this is Titano from the future, who is a descendant of Solivar the Third, is the chairman of the Guerrilla Galaxy's Primate Legion. And he communicates with Superman and is like, our galaxy, is colliding with your galaxy. And then they discover that it's not just their galaxy, it's a lot of galaxies. A lot of universes are suddenly colliding with each other. So Superman decides that he and the rest of the JLA need to find a way to stop the universes from colliding. And when they head back to the JLA headquarters, the universes have already started colliding because lots of different JLAs from different universes have all appeared in the headquarters. And this is where we get a lot of cool cameos. There's some you got Kingdom Come Batman and Superman in here. You've got Power Ring. You've got Jay Garrick. You've got Gotham by Gaslight Batman, because he was pretty new at this time, I think. And I think that Elseworld had just... Elseworlds had only just started. You got, classic Superman from the 40s. Batman from the 40s. You've got Red Sun Superman before Red Sun Superman even existed yet. You've got a Soviet Superman. He doesn't have the same costume, but he's got a Soviet symbol. So it's Grant Morrison came up with that before... Was it Mark Millar who came up with that? I can't remember. But yeah, Grant Morrison came up with it first. And then they all start fighting each other because it's a crisis. They have to. So all of these alternate JLAs start fighting one another. Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, is in this. In one panel where he's like, equal claim to reality? Sorry, but you're the imaginary stories here. Which is funny because he is a character from an animated show. Batmind is there. Everyone's fighting. Just all these different people from different universes. And so Owlwoman decides that she's going to go back to Quad to see, because there's this bad luck device that was apparently activated by Superwoman that's causing all this bad luck to happen, and she can't get to it in time, so Owlwoman decides to head to Quad, where they should have their own bad luck device that they might be able to turn off. because it's a mirror universe. But it turns out that when she gets there, it's not a bad luck device, it's a good luck device, because it's a mirrorverse. So she turns on the good luck device, and that allows everything to be fixed. They fix they stop the galaxies from crashing into each other in the dumbest ways possible. Superman and Titano use their mind powers to literally push the galaxies away from each other. And John Fox uses his speed alongside the Atom. He runs on the Celestial Treadmill, which is like a upgraded version of the Cosmic Treadmill. Doesn't really say what he did, but he apparently went back in time and stopped the galaxies from crashing into each other. So they succeeded in stopping the crisis. And then the JLA are like, yeah, that was great. We did a great job. But that's not all, because we got to go off and do more stuff, because the JLA always has work to do, and they head off to go and be superheroes. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Like I said, when Grant Morrison was writing this one, it was just kind of like, it was supposed to be just like fun and goofy, and it's a silly crisis parody. But I will, and it's supposed to be kind of just like a bit of a, what do you call it? It's like, just giving the readers what they want. Like, just placating to the reader and being like, here's Kingdom Come Batman and Kingdom Come Superman meeting DC 1 million Superman and Batman. Yeah, it's only for a couple of pages, but it's cool to see them fight each other. Like, it's cool to see Kingdom Come Batman fight Batman Beyond and the Batman from 851st Century, which also brings up questions of, is this Batman Beyond from another universe, or is this Batman Beyond from a closer future than the 851st Century? I don't know. But yeah, that's it. That's the final story in the 80-page giant for DC 1 million. And that's also the end of DC 1 million. Overall, this whole event has been one incredibly long journey. Over 40 tie-ins, I think. I think it was like 38 books in total that I'd read. And you could count the 80-page book as being at least 4, because it's 80 pages. Surprisingly, overall, most of the tie-ins in this are good. So if you're afraid to read the entire omnibus because you're afraid there's going to be a lot of tie-ins you won't like, I would recommend trying it out at first. Read them online first. So start off by reading it on like the Infinite app. Start reading DC 1 million and the tie-ins on there. And if you find that you are enjoying them, pick up the omnibus and read it physically, because to me there's nothing better than reading a book physically. As much as like I read a lot of my comics through the app as well, but whenever I can, I always try to pick up a physical book because there's a different experience with it. Overall, I really enjoyed DC 1 million. I think it's one of my favorite events so far. It's the first event that Grant Morrison has written, and I think they did a really good job. For their first ever event, they did a really great job. Like, not a lot of writers do such a good job on their first time. But yeah, that's it for DC 1 million, and next week I'm going to be starting, we're going to be continuing The Flash. We're going to be doing another week of Flash issues, so it should be all of the Chain Lightning saga of The Flash will be covered next week. And then after that, the week after that, I'm going to be doing Flashpoint. Not the 2011 one. The Elseworld story from 1999, which was like a Flash miniseries that released called Flashpoint. I know nothing about it, but I'm gonna end up knowing everything about it because I'll be covering it in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I hope to see you next week for some more Flash, and then after that, Flashpoint 1999. I hope you enjoyed this episode and have a good day. Bye.